Listeners everywhere, welcome to the Movie Show with Joel and Ryan, the weekly fix for your screen addiction and a trusted source for discussion of all things film and television. Please keep in mind that for the purposes of this podcast, Joel and Ryan are not acting as journalists, but rather fellow moving picture enthusiasts. All of their opinions should be taken as such. Also, please be warned that while Joel and Ryan may seem like petulant children, they are, in fact, adults who may occasionally use adult language. While they promise to bleep out all the worst words, it's a good bet you will still understand what they were saying. And now, with no further ado, here's Joel and Ryan.
Hello, hello, hello. That's what he would say. Or something along those lines.
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah.
Welcome everyone to the movie show with Joel and Ryan. Yay! We're so happy to be speaking into your ear holes. I'm Joel on a very important trip, and I'm Ryan.
And I'm Michael. Hey.
And I just managed to just screw everything up here. And you can't tell, the show is still working. Maybe this is just how it has to be. But now I have a pop-up window that like is trying to get me to upgrade to something. And you and I got all out of order and I couldn't find my thing. Luckily, that song, I have it set to shut off automatically. So it didn't just start playing the next song. The producers, by the way, Sheila, is still... One of the greatest days of my life was the day I got the email from like one of the fellows who wrote that and is playing the awesome bass line on it. And he said, yeah, you can, let's do it. Use the song, man. Way to go. Far out, you know? And I was like,
was it a big to-do to get the rights? Like, did you have to have it like in writing or anything?
Well, we shouldn't talk too much about the gory details, Michael. That's it.
Well,
that is a really, really good question. It's not available they were on Portrait Records, which was a subsidiary of Epic Records, which was a subsidiary of Columbia Records, which is now owned by Sony. And you couldn't go get them. So what I did was I reached out to the band personally, and at what I thought was their booking agency, which is actually a couple of them, and just got their permission. And Sony hasn't given us too much trouble, and YouTube hasn't given us too much trouble. And because I have the email from Lou, I feel like
you're covered.
Hey, I did everything I could.
Yeah.
To do this properly, you know. So
well, it's kind of signature now. You can't be without it.
It'd be tough to, I mean, we could just do whatever, but I love the producers. I love, new wave, and they're not really, they dressed new wave because it's 1982 after all, but they're more of a power pop band. They're closer to like Cheap Trick than Devo or something.
Right.
And yeah. And I like to talk about them whenever I can, because the producers are so cool. They only have 2 albums really that you can find easily. And they're both just filled to the brim with really fun, super catchy, hooky, and well played. Like, I mean, I'm songs even like that. So
all the exposure I had to you in college, all the music and movies and stuff you introduced me to, I'm not familiar with them other than hearing your theme song.
Yeah, well, they wouldn't. When we were in college, they wouldn't have had a CD out. I'd have had to have a turntable in the dorm, or to have an actual cassette from the early '80s to have played them for you. So
got it.
The producers, matter of fact, they're one of those bands that they had couple of hit songs that Sheila, unfortunately, and criminally is not one of them. That was a single and has a fun video on YouTube that you can go watch. And it's a great tune, but they had a couple other hits called, what is it? I can't remember now. I can't remember what it's called. What he's got, I ain't got. Or what I've got, he ain't got. I got you. That's what I got. That's what I got. It's a really, really fun song. And then there's another one too from their debut album, both little minor top 40 hits. And like I said, a couple of videos. Great. They're not a very photogenic band, but their cover of their first album is they're sitting on these director's chairs and they're really, really tall, like, director's chairs like you'd had on a set, like they're the producers, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's the joke. And they're just kind of sitting there, like with their legs crossed, casually watching the movie be made or whatever. It's cool, and they're very cool. Their second album is like some sort of building is on fire or something. It's that one's kind of ugly. So
not a very photogenic band.
No, I mean, no offense to them. We're not a very photogenic.
It took me an hour to put this look together. So,
so our that's I think that explains why our YouTube views are really high. I think we are better in audio form. Video killed the radio star. That's not bullshit. That really is true. And even though they're very much an MTV era band, and because they made videos in a time when Van Halen and Foreigner and stuff weren't making videos, they got on MTV a lot. That's really where their legacy lived. But they could have fallen by the wayside, but something wonderful happened. We were all there for it. And in like the late 90s, VH1 became purely a nostalgia machine, and reissue, they put out all the big hits on CDs. So CDs started getting reissued with all the little minor hits and the things that people might be yearning for in much, much smaller numbers by boutique labels and stuff. And so, that was a super happy time. And now we live in the streaming era when nobody makes any money for anything and everybody's unhappy and on strike. Everything's free and everybody's rebuilding their record collections. Michael's one of these guys, although I don't get too down on Michael. He buys a new record once in a blue moon. You basically thrift shop old records, which is very environmentally cool. It's recycling.
I enjoy, more than anything, I enjoy the hunt. It's what good things are you to find, I'm waiting to find Phantom of the Paradise. That's like my new.
Good luck.
But like if you order it online, it's like you're in the hundreds of dollars. So I'm like, anyway. All right, let's talk movies, man. Let's do it.
It might show up. Yeah, what are we here for? If you joined us last week when Joel was here, Joel and I did a really fun, loose show about legacy sequels, their benefits, of which they have some, and their pitfalls, of which they all have kind of the same ones. Yeah. And I teased at the end of that show, if you were listening, that we had another show coming up about a couple legacy prequels.
Right.
And that it was going to be, and Joel, you could see this if you go back and watch him if you want. So look at the smile on his face, because he knows that show is going to be chaos and disaster with those two guys who cannot find their butt with both hands. And he's sort of right. I've already screwed up the whole thing. I hope it looks good on the cloud.
It's recording still.
Yeah, it's working.
So that's something.
It's like, what the hell? What happened? All I did was like nothing, and it just got all weird. So you can see my face just got brighter because now I'm looking for the deep dive theme, because we're going to do a deep dive into a couple of prequels that we promised long ago. In the Alien series, was it a year ago or 2 years ago we were talking about
2 years we did the Alien films. Yeah.
Time flies, Michael Klug. What is up with the world?
I don't know. It's mid-June. That's all I know. And it's insane.
It's just too fast. Well, this is the anniversary, some anniversary of the release of these. These were both June, is busted out all over films. And not that means much to me, but it's also the anniversary, 2 years of our giant Alien show, which got us an exclusive interview with Charles de Lauzirika, which was one of my favorite shows of all time. And he'll come up a little bit here when we're talking about Prometheus. That was one of the last things he worked on with Scott Free. Yeah. And that's it. We're going to do a deep dive into Ridley Scott's return to the Alien franchise, the prequels Prometheus and Alien Covenant, and a couple of their assorted little things on the side. Here it goes.
Do a deep dive.
Deep dive. Deep dive.
I have to do a deep dive.
Deep dive. Deep dive.
I have to do a deep dive.
Deep dive. Deep dive. Deep dive.
Deep dive. It's deep dive time with Ryan and Michael, or Michael and Ryan. It's supposed to be alphabetical order.
Oh, okay.
On my screen, Michael is on top of me. That probably is not.
We're side by side in my screen, so
I know I changed everything. I don't know what my problem is. It's. I mean, I don't want to lament Joel's being missing, but here's where you guys are really going to miss Joel. Maybe I'll do a good job of this. We'll see. But Joel does a really, really amazing job, and he doesn't get enough credit for it. So we'll just credit him for it while he's here, because his sense of humor, obviously, his cosplay is top notch. Where would we be without that? And his just sort of master of ceremonies voice and attitude is really, really great.
Agreed.
Neither Michael nor I have those particular superpowers.
I can.
Michael's got some cosplay too that he could do for you, but I don't think he has to date.
Oh, I have
a little something.
That's it. Yeah.
No little guys from Prometheus though.
No, I didn't want to dig them out. I don't think I even got. I'm sure there were Prometheus figures, and I'm sure there were probably Covenant figures, but we'll get to that later. Like my revisit.
The collectibles.
Well, my exposure to Prometheus, because
sure.
It was only the second time I'd seen it, and
well, as you know, these deep dives we're supposed to go through the films in order,
correct.
Say what they are, and then respond to what they are in little bite-sized pieces. And everybody, It's like watching the movie. Sometimes it's even longer than the movie because we're just that insightful. So this,
I would say
these won't be longer than the movie. They will be half the length of each movie-ish. But yeah, we're starting out with Prometheus. I don't have any vital statistics in front of me, so I don't remember what year that came out, but
2012.
2012.
Yeah.
So there's a vital statistic for you, and I'll say my first exposure with, and then I'll let you tell yours. We were all excited that Ridley Scott was going to make another Alien movie. He had always promised in interviews and had always questioned the sequels, the Aliens, which I think he respects. Although even that sequel, I think you hear him talk about it, I think he begrudges it quite a bit. But I do think he respects it. I think Cameron has been very, very careful in praising the original and praising Scott throughout all of his discussions of being part of the Alien franchise. And so I think those two guys get along because I think they see themselves as a cut above the company. And I think that I think that's all respect to David Fincher and Frencherson. I think that is correct.
Baptiste, was it Baptiste? Am I thinking of that right?
Jean-Pierre.
Like yeah. I mean, I kind of don't, even the deep dives we did previously, that one just kind of
not to mention the Strauss brothers and P.W. Anderson, who Paul Anderson's made some movies that I think are okay, but and he made a pretty good looking and pretty big budget feeling Alien versus Predator movie on a very, very small budget. So
which one did he do?
Himself into it. He's just not on the same level.
Yeah.
And that's why we skipped those and went right to these, because these, despite their issues, and there are a myriad of issues with Prometheus and Covenant.
Of symptoms. Yeah.
A galaxy of symptoms, agreed. They are a cut above the rest. I mean, they really do feel like, wow, okay, this is at least a event film style, prestige movie. There's the visual, the budget, the location shooting, the effects, the designs of stuff, the cast, even though some of them are truly set adrift in these films, they're still, for the most part, very, very top notch. There's no,
well, there's
no bad acting in it, but there's no bad actors in these. I'll just say that.
Well, no, but go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it's like, but it's such a, exactly what you said. It's like, I didn't know a lot of the people in Covenant. I think you're right. I think we're going to be all over the damn place. But anyway,
can't be helped.
Is that I didn't recognize any of the names. Not that I'm opposed to unknowns, but it's, I don't know. There's a certain
have to bring
level.
that up in the background because there's some big stars in that film.
And Billy Crudup, right? I mean, that's kind of the two names.
Who? Well,
Billy Crudup and Fassbender. That's kind of it.
Yeah, the guy who plays Tennessee is really famous.
Right, yeah.
And Catherine Waterston was really, really hot at the time, and Carmen Ejogo and Damian Belcher. There are people in there. Yeah, they're not superstars, but I think that's in keeping with what all of these films were at the time.
Well, I mean, the thing is, like, I kind of go back and to compare, like Prometheus. I mean, there's legit big names in there. Excuse me.
Yeah, a couple, for sure.
But it's I don't know if it's just that they bring, because I think do they bring the baggage of their past career, or do they bring in like this level of familiarity and quality that you're going to probably get something? Because I kind of disagree with Covenant. Although some of it's just in the writing that they're not given anything to do, but they're not as intriguing. And I compared that to like Aliens. I mean, there's a ton of unknowns in the military contingent, but they're so interesting, well drawn, unique. And I don't know if that's because I know the movie so well.
No, I mean it isn't. They're that way the first time you watch Aliens, and it's because the writing in Aliens is way better than in these, and it does happen in the writing. I believe that. But look, Prometheus, first thing, Ridley Scott's making an alien movie. He's going to make it about the space jockey race and
engineers.
We've all, again, go back to just last week. Be careful what you wish for, because we all want to know more about that guy. But do we really? Did we? I mean, you got to ask yourself. Sometimes those mysteries are so cool precisely because they're mysteries and they spark the imagination. I will just say that Prometheus, trailer 2 for Prometheus, is one of the greatest movie trailers that I've ever seen in my life. It looks so good. This film has so many great visual money shots in it that you can edit a trailer out of it with a voiceover, and it excites you to the degree that you just think it's going to be amazing. And then the reviews started rolling out, and they were lukewarm pretty much. They were, it's all right, but it doesn't. And I was just like, that can't be. That trailer's the greatest thing ever. They're talking about the creation of mankind and what creation really means, and how creativity, when you zoom in on it, is really destruction. And it's got all these huge godlike themes and biblical references. And I'm just like, it's gotta be great. That sounds like the smartest, coolest movie ever. There's not a single xenomorph in the whole trailer. Thank God. I mean, I'm with Ridley at the time on that. He believed, haven't we? I mean, I know that's what the series sort of is, but haven't we been burned out on that guy a little bit? Isn't he getting not scary because of this overexposure in these other films? Yeah. So we're like, the promise was, we'll get to that, but let's start here with these guys. And Prometheus starts with a ritual, some weird, like heavy, with this Icelandic premortal Earth, maybe, or some other planet background. It's kind of funny because John Spaeth wrote the script where all this stuff is spelled out very clearly. And then, like he does for many of his films, sometimes to great effect, Ridley brought in an outside writer to just put his ideas in the script so that he didn't have to script anything. And that writer was Damon Lindelof. And the whole thing got Lindelofed a little bit in that the Ridley's like, well, maybe it's not Earth. It doesn't matter if it is or it isn't. Maybe it's not LV-426. Maybe it's LV something else. Yeah. These were all things they decided kind of when they were filming, which is not the time to be sorting this out. So so the space film has this very putting the pieces together and building to the crash of the derelict ship and then as it waits for the Nostromo crew to discover it. And it still has all that in it. That stuff hasn't been taken out, but it's been picked apart in the details to the point that is it that, or is it not that anymore?
It's not LV-426 that we're on.
It is not officially, canonically. Yeah. But maybe they, again, he leaves it open. He
established the fact that there are multiple ships. So obviously LV-426 is a different location.
Yeah, but the multiple ships are buried. So who knows what our intrepid original crew saw in Alien? We don't really know. That crashed ship really could be that ship. They could have redesignated the planet. You just don't know. It has a big single ringed gas giant that it's orbiting. I'm like, everything about it is LV-426, except that when we see it on the computer, it isn't. Nobody noticed. Nobody
233. I think.
Yeah. Nobody calls it that. You'll notice, because in the script, until it wasn't, it was that.
Interesting. I wonder why.
Know what LV stands for? I just found out prior to the show.
What is it?
Life viable.
I like that. That's nice.
Very cool. Yeah, life viable. It has the right conditions for maybe not our lives, but life of some kind.
I mean, one of the issues I had, just kind of over a broad look at both films, is that it didn't quite connect as I wanted it to where we start off with the Nostromo. Yeah. And so the fact that it is that LV-233, and I agree with you, it could have been redesignated, whatever, but it's like, that just seems like, why leave that to the audience to make that determination?
Yeah, exactly. And like I say in all these reviews that we do, that may be possible, but that is not an evidence in the movie, so it's not a thing.
I know, but why? I'm curious.
Just
why
a fan thing where
why wouldn't they just make it obvious? Because as I'm watching Prometheus 2 days ago for only the second time, I'm watching the wreck happen and everything. I know we're getting ahead. I know, like you said,
how it connects to the movie or how it doesn't is it isn't one or the other. It does and it doesn't.
It's in the position.
Yeah.
It's in the position that we first see it, and then when we revisit it in Aliens in the director's cut, you see it. So it's that same thing we talked about when we were doing Thunderdome. Is it the gyro captain or is it not? Why not just make a choice as the director and the filmmaker and be like, it is. Why? I mean, I don't think this is the place to be esoteric and let me leave it up to the audience.
Yeah. No,
if you're going back to prequels to establish the legend and where did this all come from, then do it. Don't leave things up to our imagination. It doesn't make sense to me.
Or don't leave us to do the complicated continuity engineering on our own and to see, I read about this movie constantly. I don't know why, it's weird, Prometheus, but I mean, there's this whole fan theory. There's nothing in the movie that suggests this. There's this whole fan theory that the security guys were all hired by a substandard firm so that they wouldn't actually get in the way of the corporate agenda that we find out is sort of behind the entire mission, close to the end of the thing, and that the scientists are stupid for that reason. And I'm just like, okay, I mean, that makes some sort of sense, but we meet Meredith Vickers, played by Charlize Theron in this film, and she claims that she's actually hired these people. She expects to profit by and survive this mission big time at any expense. And it's hard to believe that she'd be like, well, let's just get some losers here. And yet, Michael, this is where it really starts getting weird. This film is full of losers who deserve to die. I have a sound cue for that. But that's a cliche in a lot of movies. We should start with Noomi Rapace and Logan Marshall Green, who we see in a really beautifully shot and magical prologue on the Isle of Skye in Scotland, discovering this mural that it's really neat. It's just such a cool idea that these murals are all over the earth, from hundreds of years apart, and from civilizations, to use their words, that were completely isolated and could not have been touched by each other. And they show these engineers pointing away to a very clearly, similarly shaped star system. And that's what's made them go off on this incredible mission. And we see another thing we're talking about is we see the lone android on the mission played really brilliantly by Michael Fassbender.
Yes. Yeah.
David Fassbender's, I mean, he's just so good to begin with, but this is where all these little character nuggets that could be annoying all seem to work with David. And I don't know if it's the performance or if it's just the movie spends the time, his obsession with Peter O'Toole and Lawrence of Arabia, and we see him doing his hair that way and everything. And
well, it's very efficient.
I love that, because I always thought Peter O'Toole was an android. Honestly, I really did believe that. So.
No, but it's a wonderfully efficient. And again, revisiting this just very quickly, when I first saw it, not long after its release, I did not like it. And I think because I went in thinking, oh my God, Ridley Scott's back with an alien movie. But this second revisit just 2 nights ago, I was very impressed. Like, I was very engaged. And I think it's because my expectations were like, it's not
with that heightened expectations that the movie doesn't live up to. If you take those out of the picture, there's a ton to admire.
It's an interesting story. I totally agree. I love the beginning of David wandering the ship, and we're getting a lot of information. They're obviously pulling from the original Alien, just walking the ship and kind of seeing what's going on.
Yep.
But I love the fact that you get an introduction to his obsession with Dr. Shaw, Noomi Rapace's character.
Yeah, he has got this apparatus that allows him to look in on her dreams.
Yeah, but it carries through to both films. I think that's so fascinating that you made this thing that actually wove its way all the way through both.
Yep.
And I'm wondering how much that was planned, because
it wasn't, but by the time you get to the next film, they made sure that they connected all those dots whilst making a completely different kind of movie, which that's, if there's a magic to Covenant, that would be it. It would be that this really does tie together, and they are still in a totally different envelope exploring the same big ideas, which is kind of neat. But Shaw, her dream, with a little cameo from Patrick Wilson, she grew up the daughter of a pair of missionaries. And there is somewhere an unnamed African nation, and her father missionary we learn just a very brief time in this dream, this memory, that he's very anthropologically sound missionary, which they aren't all that.
Yeah.
But they're having some sort of death ritual going on in the background. And she's like, well, why aren't we helping them? He goes, they don't want our help. That's what he says. And they have a religious discussion about what basically the afterlife and it's interesting as with her as a little girl, and she says, well, how can you know that? How can you prove that? She's got a scientific mind. And he's like, well, you can't. He uses the term that she brings up later. It's just what I choose to believe. And David is, you don't necessarily get the sense that he's obsessed with her, but he's watching her dream, and she is dreaming memories very conveniently for the movie. It's not very dreamlike, but it's neat. There's sci-fi ideas happening here, and there's lots of stuff, and we don't really come back to the dreams part or whether this is a violation. I think if it was a real violation, they wouldn't just have the dream interpreter helmet just sitting there next to their little cryo chambers and stuff. But he manipulates her. She's not easy to be manipulated. Dr. Shaw, but she manipulates her with the information that he gleans from her relationship with her father, who she clearly loves with her whole heart and takes after. And that's an interesting moment in the film that gets glossed over too quite a bit.
I kind of think Noomi Rapace is, because I'm curious why she didn't super take off. I think she's got a very interesting look, almost like Elwood said, she's got a very alien look. Like, it's not a normal face. That sounds terrible, but you know what I mean. It's a unique facial structure. Well, I think she's a really good actor as well.
Prior to this was her breakout stuff was in the Swedish Girl with the Dragon Tattoo films.
Oh, right, yeah.
So internationally, she's a huge star, actually. But she's got an accent. I mean, it's little things. And Prometheus, here's a big movie that she was asked to carry that wasn't that big a hit. She still stars in all kinds of interesting movies. So she's out there carrying the load for films. It's not like she disappeared. The films that she's doing are not the...
I mean, I reviewed some horror film a few years ago that she was the lead, you know, and obviously a kind of lower budget thing, but I was very intrigued by her. I don't remember being as taken with her the first time I saw the film, but this time I was really interested.
She's a fantastic actor and a really well-drawn character, which brings us to the characters that are not so well-drawn that I have to discuss before we get too into the meat and bones of this, as we're halfway into our allotted Prometheus time. But there's this, and I'll just knock this out of the park. We'll get a little out of order and we'll see how this works. So I'm going to take you through these two cats' journey through the film. I can't remember their names, but they're played by Sean Harris and Rafe Spall. And one of them is a zoologist.
These are the two that are stuck in...
Yeah, the first time we meet them, they're coming out of cryo and they're getting their breakfast and they sit down and Rafe sits down. Rafe's got this really fun hoodie that he hides behind as a character thing. These guys are both really, really good actors. They've been exceptionally good in other things, and they are absolutely kind of awful in Prometheus. And it really is. I'm not just going to blame Lindelof, although it's just classic Lindelof character missteps, which is to just throw junk at the guys and see what the actors do with it instead of making them people. He sits down in front of Sean Harris, who's another really good actor. He's a geologist that studies rocks and formations and minerals and such. And he says, I don't know what he says, really cold, or this food sucks, or small talk. And Rafe and Sean Harris's character immediately says, I'm not here to be your friend, okay?
Yeah.
I'm here for the money.
Yeah.
And it's just like...
It's manufactured drama. Like
Correct.
There's nothing to support it. And I mean, it feels like they're kind of twofold. They're harking back to the aliens coming out of cryogenic, the hypersleep. It's all very similar. I mean, it's the same kind of banter.
We've been through this routine before, for sure.
Right. And then it's also then the same thing of... setting up Parker and Brett from the original film. Right. It's like, it's funny because I didn't think about it until you brought this up, but it was so manufactured to me, and it didn't, make contact as we're watching it. But looking back, I'm like, God, it's terrible.
And it's not even consistent with the original script. These guys are, for lack of a better term, under the circumstances, buddies. 10 minutes of storytelling from now. Yeah. They're in lockstep. They're together. They're joking together. They believe in the same sorts of things. Like, so that I'm not going to be your friend. It does them such a stupid disservice. If we allow them to become people in front of our eyes, instead of insisting they become this kind of character in front of our eyes, that we can follow their journey with some sort of verisimilitude, but we can't, because these guys, first of all, you've got a guy who's in charge of mapping the installation that they find, and he's the guy who gets lost. That doesn't make any sense.
Yes. Yeah.
You've got the guy who's into the animals and stuff, that when a space cobra shows up, which is demonstrating all of that we all know intrinsically, whether we know it academically or not, it's displaying all the characteristics of an animal that's being threatened and about to attack.
No, but it wasn't even the fact that he did it once, but he didn't. He said, like, it's okay, baby, like 4 times. I'm like, no. It's like the first time. It's not
okay. You're totally effed. We've seen this movie before. How can you, who work with creatures in nature, not see what's going on here? This is
something I wanted to address about both films, is that these professionals, they're so poorly drawn in order to put the characters into danger. These are professional scientists, semi-military security men, and they all fall apart within 3 seconds. And it's like, it doesn't compute, because I look back, of course, I compare everything to the first 2 films. Like Aliens, they're military. They take a long time to fall apart. And and in that situation, it's extreme what's going on. Mm-hmm. So that makes sense. I'll buy it. You know, the original crew of the Nostromo.
And they don't even all fall apart. Only really one or two of them do. Everyone else fights the good fight to the end.
It doesn't instill confidence or, again, even if you're given so little, like, again, Drake is an interesting character. I want to see him succeed. I'm bummed when he's gone. But these people, I don't care about any of you. And it's because you're all whiny, and you should be in a situation where it would take a little more for you to fall apart. But you're exactly right. The dude that's the mapper, how are you lost? And how is the...
How are you lost? They get let's leave the installation a head start on everybody else, and they never get out, even though, like I said, he's got the mapping software. Those little guys that map the thing, those are really cool. Yeah. Those are super cool. Yeah, I mean, like I say, every time something stupid happens, something really cool also happens. It's a strange movie that way. The holograms of the engineers panicking when they're losing control of their ship is really neat.
Which I still don't quite understand why. Is that meant to be something to direct people to the cockpit? Is that what it's supposed to be?
Well, that's what it ends up being, I guess, is a plot mechanism. But what it's showing, what it's doing for us and for some of the characters in the story is it's planting the seed that, you know, these guys live on the edge with these things that they create, or these things that they allow, that things that they encourage through their technology, through their evolved minds that they allow to create themselves. Essentially, you get the impression that the engineers don't know what these different cocktails are going to produce, but that they don't care. They go from planet to planet. They sacrifice themselves. Literally, we've seen it with our own eyes vividly, to create stuff, to make stuff happen in the universe, to make new life spring forth and new things come about. And nature, the film shows us nature through a microscope is a very scary, very predatory, very destructive thing. And they don't think much of that, other than the fact that you can tell that their creation or something has gotten out of hand a little bit.
We failed here. Move on to the next one. But I'm very curious. They didn't give it any closure in the second Covenant. You know, the whole idea of Dr. Shaw wanting to understand why they were headed back.
Her not being involved in that film outside some voiceover work and a little tiny scene that they did is shameful, I think.
Well, it would have been interesting. I'm assuming there were contract issues,
and it's shameful that she's just not involved in it.
No, even we don't get that closure of any kind. I think that's the big question. Right. Why were they coming back to
the fanboys out there didn't like Prometheus. They wanted more xenomorphs and neomorphs and protomorphs.
I mean, I did too.
And they were trying to give the audience what they thought they wanted, and it turns out they didn't want that either. So it's kind of funny, but kind of sad at the same time.
No, I mean, I what I most enjoyed about Prometheus this time is I do feel it's a little more highbrow. I mean, you know, and I think that maybe that's part of the thing that turned me off. But I was really engaged, and like you were talking about some of the religious discussions and all these things. It's fascinating.
You can track. Really, I mean, if you really want to dig deep into it, she keeps asking these. She finds out, Dr. Shaw, throughout this that even Charlize Theron's Oscar winner, really, really good actor. Even in crap, she tends to be pretty good. She's so bad in this because her character is just so single-minded and lame.
Well, it's kind of unnecessary, the revelation of her relationship with Wayland. You know, it
doesn't need to be a revelation. You should just say that from the start. It doesn't make us go, what?
Well,
it just makes us go, oh, yeah, okay.
Because, I mean, obviously then we know, like you said, her one-mindedness, she just wants to take over his empire. That's it. But
more than that, the movie actually does more than that, and it's still not enough. She wants to be accepted and appreciated by him, and in a way that she isn't. And she's very, a very angry and bitter person because of that. Because she's like all the girls that we've known. She's like the Hillary Clinton of the movie. Essentially, she's sat there in the first row, taking notes, making plans, doing all the work. You know, knowing what the right thing is, the right way, understanding the process. Like, she's done everything that she's supposed to do, and along comes Obama with his charm and just gets to be president. And that's that's the guy in us that are like, we kick back, we chill out, we draw cartoons instead of notes. And because the world is our oyster and the world's run by guys, and that even is hologram. Guy Pearce plays Wayland in it, in a hologram.
Great makeup on him, by the way.
Yeah, weird that we have a younger actor that we only see in old age makeup, but that's always weird.
It pays off in the second film.
It does, and it was supposed to pay off a little in this. And there's a really neat prequel. There's a TED Talk with his character in his prime that came out on YouTube, like with this.
I'm gonna have to look that up. That's fun.
It's fun. I mean, it's just a TED Talk with Wayland talking about the bright new future and how.
Which, by the way, I had this question. Maybe you know the answer. When did it become Wayland-Yutani?
Wayland ran into. I mean, there's the whole story is out there, so you can find it. This is just a quick version, but Wayland Company ran into issues. Financial issues, and Yutani Corporation came in kind of and saved them. And there's a whole like what the function of each company is and whatever. There's a whole thing about this.
I love that information is out there. Like that, it's so nerdy and wonderful. But it's I was always kind of
Wayland was primarily a robotics and an android and an artificial intelligence firm. And the big
Yutani's more about the planet.
Yutani Corporation wants to use all those computing and mechanical tools to basically just exploit the resources of the universe, essentially.
Well, I'm curious.
So they're more of the terraforming and the mining operations and all that stuff.
Well, I don't remember what. Obviously, Bishop is an important part of the company. I'm trying to remember how was he in Alien versus Predator? How was he? Was he the head of the company at that point?
He was, but that's all.
I don't know. I just was curious. Anyway,
that's canon. We have to deal with that, but I'd rather not. That's boring and stupid and just stupid. It's stupid. It's this. What we have here is how you do it smartly. That doesn't end it. In the end, it didn't make for a great movie, but the relationship between father and son, creator and creation. I mean, all that is happening here. We want Lance Hendrickson back. So, even Alien 3 doesn't call him out by name or make him anything. It leaves it a little left there because the more you explain it, the dumber it's going to be. And by the time you get to Alien and Predator, it's dumb. That's also dumb. That is also dumb. Lance, he's a good guy and he glides through that stuff, but it's just all stupid. So I don't want to get into it. But Prometheus, God doesn't paint in straight lines. They find this installation. They find the engineers. They even find a cockpit with a or what we know is a cockpit. There's not a big seat in the center of it, but we get to see that later.
Oh, that's so grand.
That wordless holographic 3D scene where David, the android, finds the cockpit and activates it is really, really good. Deserves a much, much better movie. It's so the music, all of it. It's just stunning.
I was very taken with this screening there, and I think it is the relationships which weren't too heavy-handed. The potential that David is, like you said, maybe not obsessed, but is interested in Shaw, and so there's so many good things in here that it's irritating that
he respects her clearly.
Yes, but it's the fact that for both films,
whereas there's not a lot of respect for her boyfriend, and you can feel that in the scene.
He's an idiot. That character's stupid.
He comes all this way to find these things and finds them, and because he can't talk to them, he loses his mind in depression and frustration, and that's. But we can't understand that. It makes no sense. It is terrible, and the actor does the best he can with that switch, but it's stupid because it's just a bad idea from the get-go. Flight crew, Idris Elba has to do something really serious and interesting, and we don't see him as a serious person ever until that happens. There is some deleted material that helps get him there that they pulled out of the movie, and And again, Benedict Wong and Immune Elliott, the guys who are work under him.
2 lines.
Yeah, those guys are written in this way that they're the guys who bet on everything. Like, that's the character work that was done here. They have lots of bets, and at the end, they have a joke about a bet.
Yeah, before sacrificing.
That doesn't cut it. If that's all you're going to bother with, leave it out. Leave it out and let us decide who they are. Because those little character building movie stereotype things aren't helpful. They are not helpful. They bring this movie down at almost every level, even high level, but definitely I agree. Low level characters.
I agree, Ryan. But the issue with both films and in Prometheus, since we're in that, I can't tolerate, and you know, I've been brought up in horror, so I'm used to characters making stupid choices. But it's so
Cain
easy to
is one of the stupidest characters ever, and yet we're given the minimum amount to know about him, to know why he's doing what he's doing.
Exactly.
And we don't sit there and judge him. We're with him.
Isn't that fascinating? Because these people going in and looking at the drums, the pseudo eggs with no gloves, they take their masks off because
taking the helmets off is the dumbest scene in the whole movie, in fact. Because you're like, just because there's oxygen here doesn't mean you couldn't breathe something terrible, which the second movie, we'll get into it, demonstrates. But you're not safe just because just because your lungs can function. You're not even vaguely safe. So there's no quarantine. They treat that like a joke. They treat all the science like a joke. The religious and philosophical discussions, though, are interesting. And I will say one more thing about that before we run out of time. We got a little more time, but before we run out of time for Prometheus, you can sit there and do the math. And I love this about Prometheus. She says, Shaw becomes obsessed with why did they change our minds? These are bombers, and they're coming to our planet. You can tell from these holograms to wipe us out. If they created us and they reached out to all these different civilizations through the years, why? What did we do that pissed them off, that made them want to get rid of us? And if you follow the timeline, the film really cleverly leaves enough clues for you without telling you this. If time debt involved and where they are when this decision happened and when these guys were about to take off before something got to them and delayed their mission. It lines up perfectly with the crucifixion of Christ historically.
Really?
That's what we did to piss off the aliens. It's really
okay. I know we have to move on to Covenant, but where does this come from?
It's in the timeline. Somebody smarter than me. I apologize. I'm just telling you guys to go find this. It's there. It's in there. It's right around year 0 AD or whatever that this is all about to happen. When they turn their backs on humanity, not only that, because they turn their backs on everybody. These engineers are not to be admired just because they're creators. They're just got these really complicated destructive chemistry sets, and they're just letting it loose in the universe. Like, that was something very shocking to me when they awoke the hypersleep one, and then he turned. I wasn't expecting. I didn't remember that he. And again, that scene was longer. Deleted scenes from Prometheus. Let's just talk about each of them. There's 4 of them that would make this movie instantly better. It wouldn't solve all the movie's problems, but these 4 scenes would make them better. That's one of them. The first one, though, is the opening ritual is much longer. There's more engineers involved. It's a very monk-like religious thing. And it's clearly meant to take place on primordial Earth. And they're clearly meant to be creating life on Earth, essentially. Okay, got it. Okay. They just cut that down and made it ambiguous, which is what they did with all of these. They took what they were and made them, what are they, in every single instance. Second one, there's a scene with Idris Elba's captain of the Prometheus scene where he's sitting around as part of this discussion, and he's like he is in the movie, he's somewhat dismissive, but he's the one, and later he's convinced of this, and that scene's in the movie, but he's the one that proposes that he goes, these guys don't feel like, this doesn't feel like science to me. I mean, look at this. And he sort of explains, this is like military. This is like an attack kind of thing. This is like a military Biohazard installment, and he tells us this very gruesome story. Maybe the movie doesn't have time for that, but it's that character's best scene in the movie, so it's frustrating that it got cut. Third, when we find out the agenda is for this 100-year-old Wayland who's still alive, woken up from cryo sleep and old age makeup, to extend his life and just live longer. He wants the key to the magic of life so that he can not die, is essentially it. And that scene, it has subtitled, and David explains to this engineer that, well, this is...
Oh, wow.
Because at first he's like, oh, you found us. And he's like, hey, cool, you're our creations. I recognize myself in you. He's happy to see them. And he treats them, he pats them on the head like children, you know, like, welcome and blah, blah, blah. And I'm glad that you interpreted the signs.
Yeah.
But what happens that goes awry is David tells him that he's not a person, he's artificial, and it doesn't like that.
Mm.
And he tells him that this guy who put all this mission together just wants to live longer. And these creatures that all their technology is based on organic stuff and life is talking to a robot who, on behalf of his master, wants to just live longer. These characters are all about sacrifice. They sacrifice themselves to bring life to the universe. And the idea of one of their creations just wanting to be immortal pisses this guy off, and he basically goes off the rails because of those two things. The scene is told with no subtitles, which is, that part maybe is okay. If it were longer and we could see the connections and the engineer's mind changing, but we don't. It just goes bad in a snap.
What would it have been? Another 5 minutes? Because not
even another 35 seconds.
Out of the four scenes you mentioned, that would be great. That would be crucial to make.
The other thing they cut that, again, it's just so stupid that they didn't, is there's a stalk and stab scene with Shaw at the end when the engineer comes for her in the escape pod, where they fight it, they duke it out, and they fight it out, and they're running through this thing, and she's not holding her own with him. She's getting her ass kicked, but she's surviving and being smart. And she leads him to that door where it gets taken over by that thing where she knows.
Oh, rather, because as it is now, he just comes.
As it is, he peers behind her, and she says, it feels like it's at the end of a big fight, but it isn't. She says, die, or whatever. It's crazy. And then so why they cut that scene where she's acting truly heroic and badass, and cut right to the point where it's at the heightened end of something that we don't experience, which feels funny. Corny.
Well, I mean, I know we got to
talk before we let this movie go. We got to talk about the alien abortion scene. Yes.
Oh my God, I was just going to bring that up because
we have to. We can't. We've skipped past it, but we have to.
It's so intense. Like, I was watching it and I was breathless. I'm like, this is insane. And I mean, the effects, her acting in the scene, and
the idea of what is happening before your eyes, it's worthy of deep dive discussion, because it's the idea that blows your mind, and it's the thing of the entire movie that's truly worthy of.
Well, and the thing that they set up is that she's not able to conceive. It's so grotesque.
David poisons her partner, who in a moment of comfort comes to her and has sex with her and impregnates her with this alien, and she starts to figure it out. And when she does, she goes to this little surgical thing,
which is a great
Vickers
little
brought along
setup.
with her.
It's just enough. It's not too much. It's like, okay, we set it up that she's aware of it.
It's completely photoreal. Everything about it is just spectacularly amazing. It's where Ridley his mission for this film comes across. This film has sets. This film has really brilliant location shooting. This film has stuff that the actors get to interact with. It's a lot of virtual stuff, but it's not all blue screens and effects and stuff. And the film lives in a very gritty, real way. That said, what is it, 3 times, 4 times we see that truck racing down that corridor to the installation? Like, it becomes, by the last time you see it, it becomes a joke. It can't not become a joke, because it's like this repeated stuff over and over and over again just like makes you feel like they just kind of didn't know what they were doing. Just park closer to the thing. What the hell?
I agree, but I'm sure they don't know. So I kind of took that as like, we're not going to park too close because we don't know what this is. Could it?
Well, and also we're not going to spend too much time on this journey. We're just going to show you that it happened again.
Yeah.
Which that's even is a mistake. It's like, we saw the journey once, we get it. You don't have to show us all that. It doesn't create any urgency. It feels silly by the time it's over.
Three quick things, and I know we got to move on to Covenant.
You got a couple minutes.
Well,
go ahead.
The first thing is that in my own writing, I love to torture my characters. So, and then to have them still have to deal with everything going on. This is prime of her being stomach stapled and having had this abortion surgery, and then having her stomach stapled and then having to still go deal with everything. I mean, that just warms my heart. I love to put the characters down. Like, you can't.
Hey, look, if you just track Shaw's journey through the film, it's a really good movie.
Yeah. No, she's great.
Unfortunately, there's a lot of other stuff that are demanding that it come down in the rankings kind of at every step. But that even that they just let her do whatever. And then when she shows up at the end, he's like, "Oh, Miss Shaw, I'm glad you could join us." It's almost like he's almost like a Bond villain at that point. It's like,
seriously.
Yes, I've let you wander the compound. Nothing can interfere with my plans. Like, the arrogance between both Vickers and Wayland is fantastic.
Yeah.
And David's contempt for them in a very subtle performance comes across. And so Numi and Fassbender really carry the day in the film. And
I agree.
And they make it worth revisiting. I watch it once a year because it's, despite the things I hate in it, and I hate it. Michael, you've been on the show before. I've read not all your scripts, but I've read more than half of them probably. And Michael creates his fair share of stupid people, but they're always, always, always doing the best they can. They're always trying their hardest and trying to make the best decisions they can to survive. And you can identify with at least that aspect of them. These guys are doing the worst they can way, way too many times.
Well, but I've preached about this, to clients and everything. It's like, if your character does something stupid that the audience is like, I would never be that dumb, you've lost them. If indeed they do something that you as an audience member think, I'd probably try that too, and it still fails, it's scarier and it's more sensible, and you've grabbed your audience more. When they create these—
a little free script consulting for you guys out there in podcast land from the master. You're absolutely right. It's the difference between what do you come to movies for? A lot of people do just come to horror movies to judge people and to laugh at their foibles and to see them get eviscerated. A lot of that happens in Prometheus. If you come to empathize with them, to walk a mile in their shoes in a very crazy situation, and to actually feel something, you have to do what Michael's saying. You have to at least try and do it. Even the effort alone is enough.
Yes.
If you just kick back
and
throw
backfires,
people,
then at least they tried.
Throw people like Sean Harris's character and Rafe Spall's character and Kate Dickey's character, just throw them out there and show how bad they are, and so that we can see them get their just desserts. Michael likes just desserts too, but that's not enough. That's not enough. The film is personified visually by the fact that this giant, massive spaceship is crashed down into Earth and is now teetering on its axis and rolling towards one of our characters. I'll leave out who that is.
So great.
And all they can, and it's visually, it's stunning.
Oh,
but all this character can think to do is run in a straight line away from it.
Yeah.
When doing this, or or some degree of it might have saved them.
That's typical horror film crap. People running down the middle of a road, just go to the ditch and the car won't get you. Right. It's the same thing. But I mean, two more quick things is like, I loved that they so sparingly used Goldsmith's score from the original.
Yeah.
I mean, they overdid it in Covenant, but this, it was, I think, maybe 2 times they used it, and it just warmed my heart. It was so lovely. And then the other question
I'm going to get his name on Mark Streitfeld. He's a Hans Zimmer acolyte, and he does a really, really nice job with the score for Prometheus.
Well, because
it's really, really well done.
Covenant is legitimately, let's redo Goldsmith's score. Like,
Yeah, well,
it's
in the first act, it is. I mean, it brings back things from Prometheus and does other things. But
yeah,
in the first act, it's like, what are the greatest hits of Goldsmith's music? Let's
Yeah.
do all three of them kind of in their entirety. Let's not
Yeah.
hint at them. Let's do it.
yeah,
I don't mind that. I think 3 is too much. I think if you picked one and we heard a reprise of it, that'd have been pretty neat. I think the fact that it rolls with that,
it's too
because
much.
again,
Yeah, it was,
what you shouldn't. I know it's an Alien prequel, and this will allow us to drift into Covenant. It's an Alien prequel, but you shouldn't be reminded constantly of a better movie when you're watching a movie.
That's a very good point. Yeah,
Well, that's a thing that all prequels really struggle to avoid. I don't mind that you connect the dots at the end. Fans really, really love that. Fans still think Revenge of the Sith is a good movie somehow. I don't know how. I don't know how you can watch that and think that's good, but they do, because it does it. It does the work of this.
it gives you
Catches
exactly.
up, gets you into the spots you want to be, or that you thought, and because it does that, it feels artificially satisfying. But that movie doesn't sit there and be like, remember this, remember this, remember this. You can't keep doing that. That's bad. Don't do that. But Covenant's got a lot of really effing cool things too, dude.
I was legitimately surprised. I didn't love the movie.
No,
it was nowhere near as bad as I thought it was going to be, because again, I never bothered upon its release because I didn't like Prometheus. So now, obviously, knowing that we were going to talk about this, okay, let me give it a go. And I enjoyed a lot of it. There's visually,
Yep.
both films are beautiful. I mean, they're just lovely.
Ridley
films.
Scott knows how to make movies, and the budget for Covenant's about half and several years later of what Prometheus was, and it
still
it
looks
has some
great.
audacious action-oriented ideas in its final act, and they work. I mean, he makes them work. He's just a fundamentally awesome visual storyteller.
Yeah, I mean, despite so many of the problems character-wise and underdrawn characters and stupid characters and all of this, it was just a fun ride, and
well, this film does some effort that the other film didn't, in leaving these characters to discover themselves a little more, not completely. It still has a lot of cliches thrown at each of them, but it doesn't. Here are these people, and here are these people. It lets these things happen with the way people react to each other and other things like that, which helps. And it's the Covenant. And the cool thing about Covenant is we start right off. Well, no, we don't. Well, we got to talk about the beginning of Covenant. Sorry. Before we get into Covenant, let's go back to the awakening of David the android.
Yeah.
High atop the Wayland Empire.
Yeah.
In this austere, like almost like end of 2001, like
Yes.
little room that he
It's
has.
very Kubrick. Very Kubrick.
Yes, very, very Kubrick-esque.
Damn, that's harsh. Okay.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it really is, and it's really cool. And it's this weird metaphysical, literal conversation between a creator and a creation, where the creation starts to disappoint the creator, like right here in the first conversation. Yes. So you can just tell this sort of isn't going to go anywhere good. And the creator is again, he's not empathizing with this thing that he created at all. He's ready to judge it. He judges its amazing piano playing. He judges the choice of music. He judges everything about this guy. And whatever part of David that is alive is being betrayed by his father here. He's being set off on a path to neither serve humanity loyally nor
he's really headed down the Ash path and not the Bishop path.
Not even the Ash path. Ash is just a corporate stooge obeying orders, Yeah. I mean, I don't want to discount what Ash genius. He's a corporate stooge in the 70s who's part of some conspiracy to save the tech at the expense of everything. That's the awakening to that in the movie is stunning. This is different. This is his whole personality is being poisoned right from the moment he comes out of the womb by this self-serving, selfish, pretentious dick of a master, of a father. And what that creation becomes is an absolutely evil monster by the time we're done with these two movies. He is monstrous and should be destroyed and is evil. David is evil, period.
He is.
He's, for you Dungeons and Dragons fans, he's neutral evil, but evil nonetheless. Anyway, at this point in the movie, we don't know that we're going to see him again, but the callback to Prometheus in this opening scene is it's great. And fantastic.
I was very intrigued / disappointed with how close this eventual relationship that we reveal is, Data and Lore in Next Generation. Sure. It's so extremely similar. I mean, brothers. And
I think this film pulls it out of the crapper at the very end, but I think when we get David and Walter together is where the whole thing, really David's appearance in the film is where it turns into a really stupid haunted house movie with stupidity abound, and it isn't an alien movie in another.
Yeah, let's go wash up.
But several pretty cool sequences happen before that.
Yes. We
are aboard the whatever Covenant. I don't want to say the USS Covenant. I don't think that's what it is. We're aboard the Covenant.
Yeah.
There's an android, looks just like David's, taking care of everybody. I think we learn. Did you watch the pods that came with this movie? Did you watch Phobos and?
No.
So there's a little short film called Meet Walter, which is basically a 2-minute commercial for the latest Wayland android, Walter, who's going to change your life. And that's pretty neat, but it's just a commercial.
I wouldn't mind having a Michael Fassbender in my employ. Sorry.
No, that wouldn't be. I'm sure you'd find all kinds of creative ways to use him, and create a very different sort of monster of your own, no doubt.
Exactly.
So, and there's also one called Phobos. These are all worth checking out. Phobos is the longest one, and it's the psychological threshold testing that the main members of the crew have to go through. They're shown these images. They're exposed to loud sounds. They're put in this little bubble, and they have all this stuff thrown at them. And it's got it's got Crudup's character. It's got Catherine Waterston. It's got David. It's got Walter. Sorry, so it's got Fassbender, and it's really got the stars in it. And the funniest of all, it has, you guys all love it, has Danny McBride in it as well. And his comments on the nature of the testing itself is very, very, because he's a very gifted comedic actor who he's great in this, because you can tell that he's a comedian who's been let be in a spook show who wants to do a good job. I don't think he's great.
It's not his performance. It's again, these characters.
Yeah, the character's pretty dumb, but he really gets behind what I like about what Danny does, because I just know his other work, and he's such a silly, off the hook, crazy guy. What's fun about his presence here is that his drive to be the hero, his drive to save the day, he has these human aspects of his character that sometimes these scientists don't really have. And I think that helps the movie. At least it helps our little return to them, those scenes, to not be just empty things. There's a real discussion where Kelly Hernandez's character says to him, they have these constant debates, and he's like, you have to remember, I know the people we care about are down there, but you have to remember that there's whatever's 400 or 1,200
2,000
humans here that you are now in charge of, and those people have to be your priority. And that discussion, while it's the basics of storytelling, it's still, I liked it. I liked when we cut back to those guys who ostensibly have the tools to help our heroes, and the reasons why they can't necessarily just dive right in and do that are compelling, I think.
I know, but then it all goes south literally when they descend with the entire ship. It's just like it's that same thing we just talked about. It's like, these are stupid decisions. It's a matter of what is better for the greater good and for the greater amount of people. And his wife, who is one of the dumbest characters in the whole thing. And it's that same thing we talked about. It's like,
is she dumb? She's not that dumb.
Well, no, but you're trained. They fall apart so fast. It's not even a matter of, oh my God, let your training kick in.
Right, but I really do believe that at least in Covenant, and that sequence I think is the scariest in the movie.
It's great.
The scene between Carmen Ejogo and Amy Simons, because I really don't feel like they do everything wrong, and we have knowledge that they don't have. But I really feel like they do it. Like they're just outmatched by what they're up against here in a way that they just can't possibly fathom. And when their imagination is cracked by the reality of these horrors that we've all seen before, they do lose it. But I feel like it's better justified in this film than the previous one.
I know, but the thing is, it's like,
nobody says anything stupid. Nobody flirts with the alien. No, I mean,
I know, but
they're trying to follow quarantine rules first because they're supposed to, and then later because they're terrified.
Ripley set the precedent. She is the one that said no, and Ash screwed it up, and we know why. But it's like in both of these films, it's like it doesn't even exist. The woman that's out taking the samples with the first infected guy in Covenant.
Yeah.
Why? You have 2,000 people in cryostasis on the ship that you're responsible for. No.
Well, our hero has a moment like that. She has an airlock, you're not coming in scene where she tells the newly inherited captain of the played by Billy Crudup, pretty well played by Billy.
Yeah, I agree.
But greatly played by Catherine Watterson, and then she says, we've vetted this other planet. We spent years doing it. We know what it is. We know where we're going to come. You're willing to trade that for a possibly more convenient, complete unknown. And as a scientist, I'm not willing to go along with that. Yes. And not only that, that decision has to be protested officially by me. Yes. She's speaking with the voice of science, and he is acting on his faith that things are going to turn out. Because
I get all that, and I think the thing that bothers me is because he sort of pseudo mentions like we're obligated to check out this signal. I mean, obviously pulled directly from the original film. If you don't go down, you lose your shares. And I think what's fascinating is that I bought.
There's
how the characters are created.
Yeah, but there's no you lose your shares. There's no corporate entity in charge of this.
Then come up with a better idea that, again, make the decision like, no, we're sticking with our plan. Sorry, whoever's singing John Denver down there. No, we're going to go to it and do to our plan. But then what happens, to make them have to go down there rather than someone's poor choice, which then, again, like, yeah, good. I'm glad you're infected and get a chest burster because you're an idiot.
Technically a backburster.
Yeah. I just don't. I think there are ways to have the characters make decisions better where you're not gonna. It's so
frustrating. And as I said, that sequence I sympathize with because maybe it's just the way it's done, or that we met those characters and spent a modicum of time with them, so that we don't believe necessarily that they're. A couple of the guys out on the mission are acting pretty stupidly, but I think those two ladies really are doing the best they can under unbelievable circumstances.
Then let me retract, because I don't think necessarily they were stupid. I think they were reacting in a way that is organic to what they have experienced. But it's the thing of, shouldn't there be a threshold before you go into hysterics?
Yeah, maybe.
Like it's like you were automatically. And
it's fun. That short film I was just talking about, Phobos, Amy Simons' character
she's a great actor too. I like her a lot.
She's great. She's the first one to pass because she's the first one to get scared and to admit that she's scared. The rest of them sort of fight the test to a certain degree. Billy Crudup, in fact, his reaction to the test is basically, no, I'm not frightened, I'm angry that you exposed me to that. And he's just very sort of maintains the line. Tennessee's all like, yeah, okay, so like bugs coming out of a person, bugs coming out of a wound, yeah, that's really great, that's really terrible. Like he actually reacts with anger, and he passes quickly too. Crudup claims to be angry, but what he really is disturbed, and the test shows that he's not super prepared for what is thrust upon him in the story.
I mean, they give you that. Like what was it they said, that he's going to be a problem because of his faith?
And there's a great little scene that is actually in the trailer called The Last Supper, which is the Kelly Hernandez starts choking on something and Walter comes up behind her and gives her the Heimlich and saves her. It's a stupid joke, but it's a cool scene in that it shows it shows a couple of things. First of all, Crudup and Watterson's relationship, it shows very clearly. It shows that the crew really believes in her and doesn't really believe in him.
Yeah.
It establishes all this fun stuff. It's could have been in the movie, maybe was meant to be, I don't know, but it's a fun scene. It also is the only scene where we see James Franco's captain of the ship actually interact with anybody and not just in flashback, which is so interesting.
Which is such a weird cameo. Yeah.
It's weird when you cut half of it out. It is. It's like Guy Pearce in super old age makeup. Why? Just cast an old guy. What the what are you doing? Why is Winona Ryder in old age makeup in the Abrams Star Trek? It doesn't make any damn sense. Why? Even when we see her 20 years earlier or whatever, she's still in old age makeup. Like, what did you put her in this for? It's nice to see her, but why? I don't. I'm not connecting the dots. So anyway, we need to jump back, Michael, because some of the coolest things that happened in the first act.
Go. Yeah.
Same motif. We meet Walter. He's alive on the ship when everybody else is asleep. The ship mother is back again. Not in any useful way that I can think, but mother's back. Yay for all you fans who desperately wanted that. Now you have that. I don't. It annoys me. Building better worlds. You can show off your shirt again. That's such a neat idea when you drive by it on Big Wheel, or when Ripley mentioned seeing the commercials or whatever. Now that we've made that a catchphrase that has to appear in every movie, we've ruined it. We've crushed it and ruined it. It came walking along like a puppy and we stepped on it until it was dead. And that's what we do with all of this stuff. Hulk smash, whatever your catchphrase of choice is, we love them until we kill the things that we love. And we do this franchise wide with every franchise. That's not one of the worst things, but this movie is guilty of doing that a few times. But what's great is the way it starts with Walter taking care of everybody. Mother tells him he's got to send the solar sails out because they've got to recharge their power banks. That is majestic and amazing looking. The design of the Covenant and all of it is so cool. The embryos, the banks of humans hanging there, swinging slightly, and the solar flare that they get hit with, that these huge solar collectors capture and send running through the ship. The awakening is a harsh, ugly awakening when we lose several crew members, several colonists, a whole bunch of embryos, and our captain who burns to death with his wife standing over him, unable to free him. That sequence it's
a brutal beginning. It definitely captures
it's really horrific in a way, and I dig that. I dig Crudup trying to take the reins and not allowing for there to be a funeral service. He doesn't even say, "Look, guys, we will do that in good time. We have to do this first." He just basically says, "You need to obey my orders here. I know what's best for us." And everyone, you can just tell that not all of them, but
they don't like him.
We also learned that this pretty much, it's not entirely, but it's almost entire. This whole mission is married couples. Carmen Ejogo says to Crudup, she says, when you get there, you're not going to be their captain anymore. You're going to be their neighbors. Try and remember that. That's a great line and a great scene, where he's sort of showing his insecurity to his wife, and that's neat. So there's a bunch of neat stuff that happens. The ship, the scene where they go out to fix the solar flares, put the ship back together.
Good tense.
It's just, again, beautiful. It's got tension in it. It's got some humor in it. I want to
Yeah,
where they hear the
hear
signal that eventually sends them off into the wrong direction.
Well, I wanted to point out something that really struck me is the difference in the funeral scene from the original and this. Like literally they're having drinks and talking about him against Crudup's choice.
Yeah.
But then you go back to when they got rid of
Kane.
Kane, which is so cold. Anyone want to say anything? Nope. Button. It's like, and he goes the jettison body. And this, there's like drinks and there's emotion.
They're friends, and they're his wife is standing there, and they all love her, and it's you could just feel it like they did this.
But I loved that difference. It was so stark. It was such an interesting choice. Obviously, character
and Crudup watching over the video screen and just getting more and more like he doesn't get mad. He just gets more tense over it, which is a nice choice by the actor. So these guys are, I mean, like I say, it suffers all the same problems as Prometheus. Like this film doesn't seem to learn the lessons of Prometheus at all. But one thing that it does is it does let these people who are inhabited by really, really good actors come into being. Just it allows them to have to create themselves and not throw these super corny quick things at us. And that really, the film really, even though we don't get to know nearly enough of them well before all hell breaks loose, the movie really does benefit from that. The difference was between Walter's, what does Crudup say to him during the briefing scene where he's like, so we're down to what, 30% on the whatever? And was
that a question?
Is that a question? Because it's weird because as creepy as David is from the get-go, Walters is the cuddliest android since Bishop.
Yeah.
Bishop, though, even that movie is keeping what he is truly under wraps until it gets to show you what he is, which is a really cool guy. Bishop's when what's her face hands him the gun and he looks at it and hands it up.
That's one of my favorite moments. Yeah.
That's where Bishop really shows up and we're like, oh, this guy's legit. If he had any sort of agenda, that little exchange, that wordless, brilliant exchange could not have happened.
Yeah. Yeah.
This Walter doesn't have that, but it's weird how it's the same guy playing the exact same kind of thing. It's like, and it's a weird indictment, Michael, I think, on us as people that we really like the android who properly behaves as a slave like he's supposed to, and not the one with the mind of its own who does its own thing out in the universe. It's like, I'll have to think more on that. But that's just something I wanted to float out there. So they get this signal. They only get it. They get it through Tennessee's helmet because he's so far out away from the interference to the engine and all the other electronics. And when they play it back, you already said John Denver. They realize it's somebody singing "Country Roads" by John Denver. It's an Earthling. It has to be an Earth person. And these guys they're familiar more in a legendary sort of way, but they're familiar with the mission of the Prometheus that disappeared or whatever, and they realize that's at some point that's what this is.
Yeah.
And even that, as much as I hate the people walking without helmets and the spores infecting them and pissing on the ground and
it's
all
such
the dumb
it's
shit
such
that happens in that mission once they finally once they finally follow to this,
you get what you deserve.
You put that cigarette on the ground, man, you're burning hell.
Well, come on, it's like you just landed on this brand new fresh planet. I'm gonna flick my smoke.
Again, nobody deserves what happens to that guy, by the way. That's one of the nice things about all this evil science is that when it comes about, it's like, there's some really gross and horrific things that happen in this film.
There's some rough stuff. Yeah.
And I think that was the mission from Ridley. If we're going to bring back these things, he never doesn't completely bring back the xenomorph, but he brings back a version of them at every step. And if we're going to bring them back, man, we're going to go for it and really make it grisly and make people's stomachs turn. Yeah. And it works. That works. That part works.
I think even all the grotesquerie, if that's a term, but like all the grossness, it's the convulsing that most upsets me. It's just so primally gross and just like, oh God,
diehard fans will complain that the life cycles are obscenely absurdly fast compared to what we've been introduced to
definitely.
in this situation. And that's for convenience sake. There's no reason behind that other than, you could say, well, David engineered him that way, whatever. This world is a hostile place where these engineers' creations have already been introduced in an ecosystem, and
you can assume that they've been able to mutate
all of that. None of that's really explained exactly, but it's all demonstrated clearly. And the fact that you can see that happen what happens as a result of that is pretty powerful, actually.
I mean, I did enjoy. There were a couple things that really were bothersome, other than maybe overreacting too early in the process. But the whole revelation of the city that David takes them to was just so abrupt. It's like you feel like maybe when they were first orbiting, that there would have been, we see structure, something to kind of set it up. It's like, oh, there's suddenly this gigantic city, which is great and it serves what it needs to do, but the fact that it just appears so conveniently, it was a little rushed. Yeah,
they flew over the whole area, and
you couldn't have gotten we see structure.
So again, the movie doesn't help you with this, but the fans have explained, like, is this the engineer's homeworld? What is this? It can't be, or it wouldn't have just this one place. Well, we believe it's basically camp whatever, and that's where they work. The flashback scene of the arrival of the derelict style ship it's really, really well done. It's I think I question what it is. There's this weird sort of, oh, you hated Prometheus, huh? Well, let us just crucify it here in this one scene.
Yeah.
There's that aspect to it that I find distasteful, but the way he pulls it off visually, again, on a much more limited budget is pretty stunning. So the fact that flashback happens helps me retroactively accept that they show up at this giant, like, Roman Empire ruin or wherever they are.
Yeah.
But nothing that happens in that ruin is good. The discussions are on its face. They think they're clever. They're not anywhere near as clever as they want. David and Walter interacting. The other characters all split up at the stupidest times imaginable.
It's dumb.
It's dumb. The flute playing is dumb. The little pan across the evil laboratory and the sketches, I think, are kind of interesting. But that sequence is stupid. What Crudup's character, how he goes out is stupid. That character, as even though this is all his fault, essentially, it just deserves better than just something bad just happening to him for no reason. All of it is frustrating. I think you feel Tennessee's desperation to get back to his wife. I think you see how the loss of Crudup's better half, it makes him an incomplete man, literally. Yeah. I think you see when Damon Bilcher's husband, when he dies, the way he becomes a wreck, but he becomes almost a more focused crew member.
Yeah.
Like the way they affect each other really is sort of interesting. And the Century woman who dies in the well, gets decapitated or whatever, watching her husband die early, and you just see the horror of that. And they're all going to bite it in that field with those neomorphs running around, picking them off until David shows up. That scene is scary. You're like, who's going to save these guys?
Well, no, the best part, we're sitting there watching because we know the one that came out of the bearded guy, the second one that got it inhaled, right?
Yep.
We see that, so it's one. And then suddenly there's more, and it's like, oh crap, where he's coming from, So it is a good scene. And
that whole, I would just say, for better or worse, Covenant from the moment it opens, it's got its weird steps, but from there to when David shoots off that flare, it is really, really clicking and doing pretty good. It's more of a B monster movie than a real alien movie. It has that feel to it that we know this is going to go bad. This is, you know what I mean? Like, we've been through this before.
Even the images of them first walking up to Shaw's ship and all that. It's like,
oh man,
that's The Descent, that's Predator. That, I mean, it's every single one of those kind of.
but that foot journey following the trail of that ship and and discovering the wreckage is so great. And it just reminds you that walking through a dark place that isn't unknown to you is so interesting. I think why people don't appreciate that scene more is because that's where it's revealed that Dr. Shaw has nothing to do with this, and that, like the engineers in that flashback scene, she's been discarded essentially by not just by in a horrible way by David, which they gruesomely sort of demonstrate later. It's more that she's been discarded by the storytelling, and you cannot help but feel that when you see her. Noomi Rapace is a real good sport for participating in this film at all, I have to say.
Yeah.
But apparently her and Ridley, because it's just like, it just doesn't do right by the character.
It's dismissive. But it's the same kind of feeling to a lesser extent of what happens to Hicks and Newt in Alien 3.
I would agree.
Like
to a lesser extent, but
exactly.
The same. It does create the same sort of.
It's like
we did all this, but whatever you liked about this, F it. That's not the thing.
Well, I mean, I think the big revelation of who David is and what his part was in creating the
These
creature.
Things. Yeah,
it's
how he's both murdered the engineers and taken over their mission in a really diabolical and evil.
And it all pays off. I mean, based on that conversation with Wayland at the beginning, but it doesn't quite. I mean, after 4 decades of wondering where these things came from, all we ever got was that it was an alien queen from somewhere.
Right.
That's the only kind of history story we get for that. And so
there's supposed to be a third movie that ties all that together in theory,
but it doesn't quite it doesn't satisfy me.
No.
I mean, it was not bad. I mean, it's interesting, and it's interesting to see what trajectory David took, but to ultimately, for it to be a biological,
ultimately that weird space jockey creature with the spine on the front of his body with the big eye sockets, who, no offense, is 3 times the size of the engineers in these films, to find out that that's just a human looking dude in a big suit is effing disappointing. So, I mean, whoever thought of that was like, lacked the imagination to properly tell that story, in my opinion. And we're having to live with that. And at the same time, we've lived with it. You gave it to us. Now you're truly dismissing it and disregarding it in a way that feels like all these steps that we've taken to get to this point have been unnecessary. So,
well, I mean, I like the whole creation theme that goes through both films. I think that's a really interesting thing, but and I didn't hate it that it was David that ended up creating them, but it wasn't as grand or
as alien or as mysterious a mystery as you wanted. It's petty humans doing petty things to each other. It's frustrating. I
mean, not knowing where the aliens came from all these decades it's kind of a bummer that we know, and it's not all that and a bag of chips, you know. So
somebody up in the Covenant gets the idea to take the lander to they don't have another, orbit to
because that
ground
exploded.
ship,
right.
But they do have this thing that's designed to bring all the stuff down and everything. So they decide to use that once the storm starts breaking up again. That's a neat idea. It does sort of make the debates that we've suffered through those characters work. I like that. I do like, although what happens to them is kind of awful. Well, I guess we'll get to that. I won't reveal that. That's a famous thing from the film. But Jesse Smollett and Kelly Hernandez's character, I like that Kelly's I like that in that relationship, it's the lady who's like sort of, the one that's he's like a yes man to her. He's like, listen to what she's saying. Yeah. I think that works pretty good, actually. It's in a very simple way, and again in a way that isn't loaded with cheap, quick dialogue. There's a relationship there that develops that's interesting. Tennessee's coming as soon as there's an idea. We know he's coming. He's been trying to get down there as much as he can. That when he's super happy to get a hold of what's her face, and she's like, okay, wow, you guys are okay. Like, it's just so relieved.
What about
in that.
my wife? Can I talk to her?
He's great. So here's the plan. It's all business first. What a great crew member. And then it's, okay, you mind if I talk to my wife right now, and that her having to tell him she's gone is
this is something that kind of bothered me a little bit. Again, it's like I don't necessarily
I like that there's time for grief amongst these characters, even if it is superficial. We're given it in the film by more than one person. I think that's valuable.
But structurally, I think one of the things that kind of bother me, and I don't need to be spoon-fed necessarily, but I do like introductions. I mean, they sort of talk about the trucks, which then, of course, are important in the end, but that platform ship that they use is never kind of introduced. Because I'm thinking, again, back to Aliens, it's like, obviously we see the loader because it's important later. And it doesn't need to be a 3-page
The trucks,
dialogue.
obviously, they're shown securing those after the flare hits them, so that there you have a reason for that whole set to come back and be a thing.
Right.
But yeah, the other lander
just
is
introduce it.
Hey, wait a minute, we have that other thing.
Yeah, and
he does bring it up early in the movie, though. He says, "Hey, we can use that," and they're like, "You can't use that in a storm. Also, you just can't use that, man. It's for the whatever. It's only."
Perhaps that went over my head because I was like, "Where is this coming from?" Good for you.
Because you don't really know what they're talking about, so it's not. You're a dumb viewer, but they do
cue of what it is. You know, I mean, that was a great action sequence. You know, using that, it was a lot of fun to watch.
It strains anything that's happened in the series from a physics sort of standpoint. But I agree, they do it. It's well done enough by a real master filmmaker that it works.
This is, now that we're kind of coming up on the end, can we do something other than an airlock? I mean, it's like Aliens. Yes, it's a second time we're reliving the brilliance of that idea, but the fact that we're doing it again is we
could dump molten lead on it and then hit the sprinkler system.
No. You know what I mean? But there are other.
I'm just saying there's no airlock in that one.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's like that's another one of those, like you said, hey, did you get that? You get what we're doing here? And it's like, it's been done too many times. It's been done better. I accept it here only because it's a false ending that the real evil is still with us. There's whilst saving crew members from the neomorphs, Walter gets his hand just absorbed or destroyed by acid, basically loses a hand. And he's instrumental in getting what's the very couple of 3-4 people that are left at the end of all of David's experiments free to get to this landing pod thing. And we're not. And the David Walter stuff, I guess the stuff that bums me out the most is I find that all that stuff just stupid. I still really like Walter. I think David's interesting, but I think David talking to Crudup's character, David talking to everybody except Waterston, those scenes sort of fall flat to me. I'll show you the fingering scene or whatever. That was the famous scene. It was. I actually really liked the kiss. Of course, that's so homoerotic. I'm like, that's great. 2 Fassbenders for the price of 1. But it's
and a really healthy and intelligent homosexual couple in this film, played by a couple of heterosexuals, and we'll look the other way on that one. But nevertheless, the representation in the movie, this is a diverse cast in every way that it can be without feeling like there was some checklist that went along with it.
Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I didn't mind the Walter David stuff, but it's so. They sort of go to the fact that Walter is a later model, so he's obviously upgraded. But then the fact that he dies, and spoiler, then comes back for that Matrix fight, it's like, and he's like, we've been upgraded since you were around, which is just such a dumb little kind of, well, that's easy. Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know. It's not horrible, but it's certainly not the applause line that the movie thinks it's supposed to be. That's for sure.
Right. Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. But of course, we've got 2 characters who look exactly the same, so we're gonna switch them at some point, and the movie does that in a pretty clever way. but in an inevitable way. If this is a surprise to you that they've changed, that David won this struggle, that he sacrificed his hand to take his place amongst our heroes,
then you're not paying attention. Yeah.
He even heroically helps them survive in every way that Walter would have. So the alien gets shot out the airlock after that shower scene. It's not the abortion scene, but it's worth mentioning. It's intense. We haven't had anything quite like that in this series yet, let's just say. And two characters that we admire a little bit and that have been sort of sitting safely on the Covenant the whole movie. Well, they're just getting it on, and all of a sudden,
this will go into political theater a little bit, but I was very distracted by the presence of that actor based on personal crap. Like immediately, I'm like, I'm irritated by his presence.
Oh, because of his fraud or whatever.
Yeah, whatever that happened, because I had no idea he was in this. I'm like, oh, but when I saw his name in the front, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But that was a distraction to me. It was a distraction. But I think the ending is, it's like you said, it's inevitable. I saw it coming a mile away, but I think it was one of those things that if you're a good viewer, you know what it is. But it's definitely
a twist that even though it is inevitable, you are willing to play along with.
But it's like the call is coming from inside the house. You know it the whole time, but the actual revelation of what it is.
Right.
It's always kind of that, oh gosh.
And sorry, these deep dives contain them. Sorry for the massive spoiler for Covenant, but it has to be talked about because it doesn't work as great as it could. It works the best because it's not a revelation that is given to us. The fact that the coolest and most heroic character in the film is the one that we see her have the revelation, it makes it really, really painful, because the last thing she wants to be or deserves is to be some gross medical experiment like Dr. Shaw was. And it's horrific. Like, there's the idea, the fact that David is in this playground with all this amazing organic material that he has.
Okay, question for you.
It's a horrific thought, and it's more icky and gross the more you think about it. That's a win for the end of the film.
Oh yeah, it's
also the darkest ending of any Alien film. Even Ripley dying this is worse. This is like,
because she saves the day. Yeah,
exactly.
I'm curious why only 2 embryos. Are we expecting more? I mean, is that going to be enough? Like, what is one of them a queen?
He only needs a little bit of that, goes a long way. Remember, this stuff is all happening. This stuff is all happening on a microscopic level. He stashed those. He brought them with him, and it's not just that he has all these humans and human embryos. He has just this little bit of alien DNA that is and with the knowledge that he's gained, the monstrosities that he can create with
the technology now too. Which has a question. Has anyone ever tried to determine or understand why technology went backwards?
No, the fans really want an answer to that, but no, they went backwards because the newer movie took place in the 70s. That's the only reason. Michael, it's because it was filmed in 1978.
I understand, but I'm like, do you don't think it's necessary to somehow explain why technology was less?
No. If you want an explanation, there is one. This is a huge, fully funded scientific ship, as was the Prometheus, was designed and built by a quadrillionaire. The Nostromo is just a tugboat attached to a giant mining thing.
That's always what I kind of went in my head after I watched these.
But the reason is because computers in 1978 aren't like computers now. And to make everything going forward look like 1978 version of the future is limiting and stupid, because we shouldn't care. And if you do,
I don't necessarily care, Ryan. I'm just curious if they ever thought about somehow addressing it. Because
they don't address it directly, but that's the common for the people who are all up in arms about that. That's their story, and they're sticking to it. Yeah. And it's not a bad one. It's
No, it's not a make or break for me. I didn't mean to get you all worked up, but I just wanted to bring it up.
It's the wrong question. You shouldn't be engaging with this stuff, asking a question you in the real world already know the answer to, and want the film to spend any effort trying to give you an explanation for that. It's just, those explanations are almost never, every once in a while they're clever, but they're almost never good. That, Klingons went through 100 years where foreheads didn't grow right. Like, just come on. Who cares?
We're having a deep dive discussion, so that's why I had to bring it up, because I did think about it.
Hey, you're not,
because I actually said, as Prometheus started, I'm like, how are they going to explain blah? So whatever.
You're one of millions to ask, so obviously it's a thing that's out there. I'm not venting my frustration with you. I'm venting my frustration with that level of discourse over the films.
It's not a make or break. It doesn't
about
matter
every little thing, and it's just like 1978. Go look, check it out on your calendars. Go watch a TV show from 1978. That's what they were working with. That's the only answer. You shouldn't need another answer other than that, because the alternative is to stick with that vision of the future and just only do that. And that wouldn't be good. The Prometheus and the Covenant have all kinds of visual splendors and amazing bits of technology and stuff. I mean,
Well, I'm just thinking like those 3D, dimensional maps they have on Prometheus and on Covenant would have been really handy on the Nostromo. That would have been very helpful.
Yes. Super helpful.
Like Dallas, everyone would probably be okay,
No, probably not. Probably not, because we've seen what happens time and time again.
It's the same in all of Romero's films. It's the people's stupidity and curiosity and greed that ends up killing them, not the actual monsters. So, and
I actually don't object too much to stupidity. It really is. It really is the film. When the film demonstrates something, but when it over explains that to us, it takes any, and I really think Covenant, I give it a tip of the hat. Because the stupidity is the captain's stupidity. The fact that they're even there in the first place is where this all went wrong. You can trace it all the way back to the first act, just like King Lear. This was all going to happen. You had no choice once you made this decision. Yep. And so what happens to the rest of them is just sort of, it's unfortunate. They don't make all the best decisions. They're tripping over things and shooting themselves with their own guns. I mean, all the dumbest crap that can possibly happen happens. But in Covenant, it does feel a little less choreographed and a little less telegraphed than it is in Prometheus, which in Prometheus really, really frustrates me. So in this movie, it doesn't so much, because these guys don't act stupid until they do, and they really are. Simonton and Jogo, what they go through, like, I can't even imagine. I can imagine being so petrified that I wouldn't let my friend out of quarantine. Not because of the rules, but because I didn't want to be exposed to whatever the F was in there. And I just feel like that's a horrible feeling to think that you would do that.
No, looking back on it's harrowing, that whole sequence, and I can't blame them for reacting the way they do. It's just the fact that they reacted so viscerally, so quickly, rather than professionally. Not necessarily that they're stupid, that it took literally that the whole
thing from an alien standpoint is on fast forward, and that's sequence, that's the thing that it suffers from. That's the thing that the whole thing suffers from. It's like,
well, I'm so glad
it has a slow first act like all the rest of these have, but it doesn't have the patience with the kernel horrific ideas that the original film has.
Yeah.
Well, the second film is wise enough to just not show that time passing, like not including that in the story. It's a clever idea. So,
but I'm glad you chose to do these, because it's like I'm so thrilled that I revisited Prometheus and I have a newfound appreciation for it, and that I finally got to see Covenant, and it was nowhere near as bad as I was expecting. Like, it was enjoyable. Had, like, we discussed a lot of problems, but it was enjoyable, and I'm glad that I kind of have that completion of the whole franchise, and but I'm jonesing to, like you do, like maybe look at Prometheus in another year and see what comes of it, you know?
Yeah, it doesn't get better.
Aw.
That well, I'll just say that second time you watch it is the magic time. So I'm glad you got to experience that this week, because it really is. It was for me. It's precisely what you say. I didn't like Prometheus because such and such and such and such. I know that about it. Now I'm watching it, and now I can accept what's really glorious about it, because I'm not being annoyed or surprised by these things that I knew I didn't like. That second time through you don't find more and more and more. Prometheus is a great movie in that you find more and more and more the more you study about it. That fact that some idea of human evolution happening to the point of creating a messianic figure that we then destroyed, and that pissed the engineers off enough to come. I mean, you don't have to be religious. In fact, I think the film doesn't come out on the religious side of the argument, either of these films, to enjoy them. But I think that faith and religion are ingrained in the DNA of these prequels is one of the most interesting things about them, and not one of the lamest things about them. And it also creates this visual imagery that goes along with it that Ridley put into his story that just is stunning. So those things I love about it. I am at this point, because I feel like he's made two movies that are really disappointments. So at this point, do I want another Ridley film to tie it all together? I mean, I think I do. We're on the verge of maybe that happening. So
because there's an Alien series now in development, correct? Is it Fede Alvarez that's doing it?
Oh yeah, that's right. That I'm not interested in at all. I don't want to visit these things every week amongst love triangles and other TV show issues.
But we'll see. I'm going to hold judgment, but I kind of agree with you. I'm kind of, now that I've enjoyed Prometheus and didn't dislike Covenant, I wouldn't mind seeing some closure. Something I keep looking to Rogue One and Leia's appearance at the very end. I want that to connect to the Nostromo. Like that's what in my head, whether I would like it or not, you
want them to put a digital Carrie Fisher in the...
Exactly. Yes. No, but I want that little nugget of ultimate connection.
Hope.
But like something like
what do they call that? The uncanny valley?
Uncanny Valley. Yeah.
You look a lot like her, but I reject you entirely.
But that's what I want. I want, if he is going to do a third, then I'm going to want that little nugget of connection.
Yeah.
A bigger connection, but something that
they're obligated to do that for us, I think.
They have to. Otherwise, I'm going to be really angry. Was it always intended as a trilogy?
No, it was intended as a prequel that connected all the dots at the end of Prometheus. You can see it. It's right before your eyes. Everything is there that you need. Yeah. Then they changed that because they thought they'd have a big hit. And then they wanted to do a series. Then it wasn't a hit. So they had to beg to do a lower budgeted version of a continuation, which they then had to promise would be more grisly and more like an Alien film. It's a miracle, all the compromises they had to make creatively just to get Covenant done, that it's any good at all. It's actually very, very impressive how good it is. So it's just not as good as you'd want. And both of these movies are kind of like it's stuck in that phase. We live in a 1-star, 10-star, best movie ever, worst movie ever culture. And a lot of the discourse around these two films is best movie ever, worst movie ever. It's these two diametrically opposing viewpoints fighting with each other. And of course, it's I think to anyone who watches a lot of movies, they're clearly neither. They're in that 6 out of 10 star-ish sort of rating area.
The nether regions of the soul.
Yeah, and that's not bad if they've got things that interest you or that draw you in. I mean, that not every movie's a home run, and it shouldn't be. There should be some doubles and some variations, or you get really bored with films really fast, especially monster movies in space. And I guess on that note, Digital Leia, on behalf of her, on behalf of Digital Peter Cushing, on behalf of Joel, who could not be here, I hope he...
Hi, Joel. We missed you. I hope he's
we
not,
did
yeah.
miss you,
I
but
think
we
I think
did okay, but it
though.
wasn't the
Yeah.
same. It wasn't that same beautifully linear
I know, we
structured thing.
we were all over the place, but I think we hit all the major points. So,
I think so. I don't think we left out anything that is egregious or awesome about either of them. I think all that at least got in.
yeah.
And Michael, you saved me this week. You kept us on schedule. I really appreciate you being willing to show up.
No, I'm glad we got to talk about
Back when we were doing the Max movies, he's like, well, I could come and do it. I was like, yes, please. I don't want to do one. There is a solo Ryan show out there for you guys. You want to hear me talk about 70s conspiracy movies and to settle the great alternative Oscar tie between Barbara Streisand and Katharine Hepburn. You can hear me attempt to do that. That really was
better. It's better to have the multiple viewpoints, I think.
It's supposed to be a discussion, and
Exactly.
we appreciate everyone who listens to the show, but it became clear years ago, really, that they were not willing to discuss things with us. They're not interested in that. So we need each other to do that, and it helps. And these are interesting movies. We were talking before the show, these were low-hanging fruit in that here it's the Alien franchise, which Michael and I both adore, warts and all. And there's great things about them and there's some terrible things about them. Embrace that, man. Embrace the mediocrity. Embrace the 2.5, 3 out of 5 rating, because that's really where most things live, and those make for interesting discussions. So don't.
Agreed.
So, all right, I'm going to play a little song you guys are familiar with. Michael, thanks again. I love you, man.
And I love you too.
And we'll see you next week where we look a little bit more familiar. Bye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to The Movie Show with Joel and Ryan. Remember, all views and opinions represented in this podcast are personal and belong solely to the speaker and do not represent those people, institutions, or organizations that the speaker may or may not be associated with, unless explicitly stated. None of these views and opinions were intended to malign or deceive. And now, here's the producers, circa 1982, to play us out.